The other thing that's going on in our country is we've created incentives for communities to push people into the institutions. And I'll tell you, and I don't know how it works here, but I'll tell you how it works in the States, that if you're a local community and you're working with children who are starting to step out of line, they're getting in trouble, that if you work with them a little while, the community takes responsibility for them. But if you put them in a state institution, the state picks up the tab for the cost of that. Well, by doing that, what you've done is you've created incentive. Because if you're running out of patience a little bit with somebody who's causing you trouble, but looming out here is this state system, and if you would, they'll take the problem off your back. It'll be out of sight, out of mind for you. You've created a financial incentive to have a lot of young people incarcerated. And if you talk with anybody in business, business people will tell you if you're going to create change, the first thing you want to study is what's your incentive system. Because if you don't deal with the economics of the incentives, you're not going to create the change. And one of the things we've clearly done in our country is we've created great incentives to have a lot of people incarcerated. And right behind that, in terms of the incentive of having incarcerated, incarceration has become big business in our country, both public and private prisons. I was telling Barry here that I've got a good friend who's the chief probation officer in Sacramento, California. And he has 150 vacancies in his probation department. And I said, is the workforce that short? And he said, no. He said, our problem is we hire them, they work for us for a couple months, but then they get recruited by the California prison system. And he said they'll make almost twice as much working for them as they work for us in the community level. I said, well, what kind of numbers are we talking here? And he said, we start our probation officers at $60,000 a year. And he said they just did a study on just 2 prisons in California that with their overtime, the average salary was $120,000 to $130,000 a year per guard. So then what the guards did in California is they formed a union and they became a political action committee. And not only did they become a political action committee, they became the most powerful political action committee in California. They gave $1 million to each gubernatorial candidate in the last election, which was more than any PAC in the state of California. Think about that. So today, any issue that goes over the governor's desk that might affect incarceration rates, the governor's staff sends it straight to the guards union and gets their opinion on it before they deal with it. And what Vern told me is that any notion of doing something other than prisons gets killed at that level. So one of the realities we've got to deal with in our country is you've got financial incentives to push people into institutions, and once they're there, you have financial incentives to have a lot more prisons. So we're up against it. In operation now for 4 years, and the way it works is the state figured out our quota in our county. At any one time, we could have like 25 young people locked up in the state institutions. And for everyone we don't get locked up, we get $56,000 for. And that $56,000 does 2 things. We spend some of the money with a local program to work with the kids better, but the other half of the money goes to community-based organizations. I don't even get to decide how it was spent. We have a citizens council. You can't be a bureaucrat to sit on the council because I didn't want the agencies just to split the money up. It's all citizens. They decide how the money is spent. And you know what they're spending it on? Home health visitation with nursing, parenting training, after-school activities for kids, all highly preventive initiatives, services for crime victims. So now the community, if you would, we've reversed the incentive. Before there was incentive to pump kids into the institution. Now there is incentive to keep them in the community because the more we keep in the community, the more money the community gets to do the kind of programs that we want to do. And it's a fair amount of money, even for a county our size, we're $100,000. I'm talking about $900,000 a year of money that stays in the community that would have gone to the state institutions. And about 2 to 3, almost $400,000 of that goes into pure community-based primary prevention initiatives. Now, they did an evaluation on this to find out what was the result of this effort. And I'm going to give you 2 numbers that they came up with in evaluation. We reduced incarceration in state institutions by 72%. We had a 72% reduction in incarceration in state institutions. And during the time that we did that, the time that they studied it, our repeat offender numbers went down by 41%. Those juveniles who commit 3 or more serious crimes, that dropped by 41%. Some folks had predicted because you had them in the community, it would have been just the opposite. So while we were reducing incarceration and having more of, if you would, juvenile offenders stay in the community, the number of repeat offenders also dropped by 41%. So it was really encouraging for us that maybe there's not a connection with locking up a lot of people in violent crime. That I think this project is proving that you can reduce incarceration and also reduce serious crime at the community level at the same time. And that's just been very exciting. I think aside from that, and I'll just close with this, I think the main thing that happened was, in this entire process, was the community decided to take more responsibility for the young people that were acting out. That might have been the healthiest thing of all, is that the community, rather than having the community be able to give its problems away, the community was confronted with, we don't get to give the problems away, because now if we give the problems away, it costs us $58,000 for every one we give away. That if we're able to keep the young people in the community, that there's clear incentive for us, because the community will become a better place and a safer place, apparently, based on the research, for having done so. Safe in the short run, as well as certainly safe in the long run.